OSI model.
The OSI, or Open Systems Interconnection Model, is a reference model used to help describe how the 7 layers that encompasses interact with each other to accomplish network communications. A mnemonic phrase to remember all the layers is, all people seem to need Domino's pizza. The layers it involves in reverse order are application, presentation, session, transport, network, data link, and physical.
In this presentation, we will use the analogy of ordering a pizza to demonstrate the OSI model and the processes involved with each layer. Layer 7 is the application layer. It provides the user interfaces to access network services. Components in the application layer have both client and server components. Protocols include HTTP and FTP. Problems include client and server issues and the commands used to communicate with the client or server. This would be the equivalent to making a call to Domino's to place the order for your pizza. Layer 6 is the presentation layer. It communicates with the application layer. It formats and translates data. Outgoing messages are formatted as required by the application layer. Incoming messages are formatted as required by the receiving application. This layer has a software component called a redirector that intercepts requests for service. Requests that can't be accomplished locally are redirected back across the network to a network resource that can accomplish the request. It communicates with the session layer. This would be the equivalent of the person at Domino's receiving the call, taking down the information from the caller, and putting it into a format that can be understood by the cooks to make the pizza.
Layer 5 is the session layer. It permits 2 computers to hold ongoing communications called a session. It handles communication setup ahead of data transfers and session teardown when the session ends. The common network functions at this layer are name lookup, user logon, and logoff. It manages the mechanics of ongoing conversations, such as identifying which side can transmit data, when, and for how long. This is the equivalent to when the order is being associated with a location to be delivered to.
Layer 4 is the transport layer. The PDU at this layer is a segment. Protocols associated with this layer is TCP and UDP. It manages the transfer from one application to another through the network. It breaks the data up into smaller segments using a process called segmentation. Data segments have to be smaller than 1,518 bits, or the maximum transmission unit, or smaller. The transport layer also handles flow control and acknowledgement. The added transport layer header contains source and destination port numbers, the sequence and acknowledgement numbers. The acknowledgement numbers handle making sure that the data is sent or received, and the sequence numbers handle putting the data back into the order if it was received out of order. But this is not used if the protocol is UDP. This is equivalent to putting the pizza into the box and getting it ready to be sent out for delivery. Layer 3 is the network. It handles logical addressing, translates logical network addresses, IP addresses, into physical addresses. It performs best path selection and routing in an internetwork. Access control is handled at the layer during the routing process. Software working at this layer is IP, ARP, and ICMP. Routers operate at this layer. This is equivalent to taking the address and determining the best route to the destination to complete the delivery of the pizza.
Layer 2 is the data link layer. This layer works with frames and will define how computers access the network medium. The MAC address is defined on this layer. Components of this layer include network interface cards and switches. Problems at this layer would include collisions and invalid frames. This is the equivalent to the delivery person taking the pizza and getting into his means of transportation. The first layer is the physical layer. This layer encodes a message as bits and sends it or receives the incoming bits. This layer determines the details for creating the physical connection. Components of this layer include cable, connectors, repeaters, and hubs. Problems with this layer would include interruptions in the signaling, possibly due to EMI, or electromagnetic interference. This is the equivalent to the delivery person driving the pizza to the destination using the defined route.
This concludes our presentation on the OSI model. It's the pizza for you and me.